Okay, so first and foremost, let me start by apologizing that we didn't start as earlier agreed last week. I informed Robert I fell sick. I had a heavy schedule with one of the factories here, and I think because of that movements, I got visitors, I got sick, so I was unable to start as earlier planned. So apologies for that. But however, the course doesn't have heavy content, so I believe we should be done with time. I sent Robert the enrollment key yesterday. I hope you had time. Those who have noticed there are let me see the number of participants, people who have managed to enroll. So far, I think there are four people have managed. And those who have, I don't know if you have looked at the content, some of the content. Have you looked at the content?
For me, I enrolled today, so I did not manage to book at it.
Okay, so let me just share my screen so that you can see some of the content that I've put up. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, so first things first, look at the study guide. Look at what is there. Gives a guide on the topics that we shall discuss. Then also quite important is this case study folder. It has a folder on about the school for boys and gives a case study, which we shall use as a basis for 2 assignments. But I first wanted us to have a discussion, preferably tomorrow, if you've gone through it, and we begin our discussion on ICT strategy. Then we have our first topic, ICT as a strategic enabler. So I've put up some reading material plus the lecture slides. Then 2 videos that I got off YouTube. They give, I think, a good definition of what strategy is. But also look at the reading materials and look at it some more. Then hopefully we shall also look at benchmarking, hopefully today if we have the time. If not, we shall look at it tomorrow. That I also put up a video which explains benchmarking. It's a key element of strategic development. Yeah, it's a key element that is part and parcel. So please take the time to look at those, at these materials, that they support our learning process. Okay, so with that, do we have any question?
Not from me.
We are okay. Okay. I'm sure we've met before. I taught most of you in ICT design, I think. So you already know who I am. And I still remember most of you, especially Twin, is one of the people I still remember. But we shall remind ourselves who we are in case we forget. So these are my contact details in case of anyone who wishes to contact me personally. This first number of the MTN line is my WhatsApp line in case you wish to ask me any question. So today, I wanted us to start with what strategy is. We want to look at it in general, and then we shall focus specifically on ICT strategy. So this is basically an introductory session. So why is this? Why are we now talking about ICT strategy? If any of you is like me, who is, I would say I'm a dinosaur in the world of computers and ICT, you would have seen how ICT has the growth of ICT and its significance to businesses and to the enterprise world and firms and organizations and so on and so forth. It's really something that has grown over time. Robert is informing us that he's traveling. That is okay. Let's move on. So because of its growing significance and the constant developments and the dependency we find between ICT and organizations, there is now a shift, or there is now a belief that ICT has to be now a strategic element within an organization. It is something that must be, we must think about it on how to use it strategically for competitive advantage. It is no longer just the tool like a pen that you have to write down something, but now this is something that an organization can deliberately use to bring about not just efficiency, but a competitive advantage for the organization. So it's now, ICT is now, it's now part and parcel of our lives. I remember a story they told me. They told me about my late father. They told me that he wasn't present when he didn't bury his mother. Reason being, when she died, at that time there was no easy means of communication. So when he came home, that's when he was told, oh, your mother fell sick and died and we buried her. So you can imagine something like that now happening in this day and age. It would seem quite strange. Everyone has a phone. Most people are, not most, okay, but a big number of people have phones connected to the internet. We have instant messaging platforms like WhatsApp, SMS, Facebook, and so on and so forth. So information can be easily transmitted between people. We now see the development of the social media platforms. And these organizations are beginning to see how significant they are. They can make or break an organization. What do I mean? Today, if one of you decided to go on Facebook and speak ill about UMU, you would see how quickly the PR or management would rush to change the narrative. Social media can make or break you. Many organizations now are selling their products and services online on social media platforms. So it's really now a significant part of an organization. And for that matter, it is important for now professionals like you, ICT professionals, to be able to guide management on how to use ICT strategically. And also for you yourselves to position ICT within your organizations that they immediately answer needs. I remember before COVID, That time I was head ICT UMO. And we had begun talking about within the department that, oh, we really need to now think about, we need to think about putting thinking about ICT in terms of its strategic position within the organization. And I remember we began thinking, where can we start? And immediately we thought, let's start e-learning. Let's first think about the e-learning perspective. We went ahead and set up Moodle. And when COVID hit, we already had a Moodle instance set up. The only thing that was done was just to make it look prettier. And of course, also to begin to ask management to give us funds so that we could improve the efficiency of the server, the performance of the server. So that was a foresight on our side, I think, as ICT. And I think it really helped. So it's important now for ICT professionals to go beyond being technicians or being the tech savvy guys who can come and sort out any problem on a laptop and not even tell you what the ICT person has done, but to go beyond that, to see how to make ICT a strategic element within the organization. So this is why it is now important that we take on this course for purposes of strategic and policy planning formulation. You have a good understanding of it. Now, let me first dispel also certain myths. The process of developing a strategy and policy for any organization is quite laborious. It's not a one-day thing. It is something that takes time. It takes people sitting down together, not just the ICT department, but sitting down with members of management and other heads of department and brainstorming, and then coming up with the initial skeleton, and then developing it further, then also the policy as well. So I will not tell you that by the end of this, you should have an ICT strategy and policy for your organization. No, but for you to know the steps, it takes to develop one. So let's first of all get that out of the way. Before we go any further, do we have any question or comment?
No, Doctor.
Okay. So these are just some of the general objectives for the course in general. And again, that I gave you the more generic one that you should know how the steps it takes to develop an ICT strategy, which then leads to a policy. So these are the general objectives that we are going to go through. Key point, apart from just benchmarking, another key point we need to take note of is change management in ICT strategy and policy development. There must be a change management plan. Why? I remember one time I had a conversation. That time when I was still head ICT, we used to have these workshops with ICT heads and directors of institutions of higher learning, universities, and so on and so forth, which were organized by Reno. And I remember there was this one particular gentleman from one university who one point came and sat next to me, and he began narrating, telling me how he had developed an ICT policy, but he said, but no one knows. And he was really proud of that fact that no one knew he had developed an ICT policy, but he had it there with him. And of course, he was so proud of himself, I didn't want to burst his bubble that there was no point to that policy. A policy should bring about a change, not just in the ICT department, but a change in other departments. It should have a causal effect that even you find the finance department changing some of its policies and procedures because of the new rules and regulations that have now been brought on by ICT. Take an example. If your ICT policy now is focused on security and then talks about things like passwords, or who should access what information, who should have access to what information, and how should it be accessed, that should have an automatic effect on all departments that are handling any kind of information. They should also now have their own policies which clearly state security, who should have access to what information and why. So change management must be visible. This change management must be visible. And we should also see best practices being now applied, not just within the ICT department, but elsewhere. Why? Because coming back to our earlier statement and our earlier understanding that ICT now is a strategic enabler. So we should see it being strategically positioned in each department and also for the overall organization, but we should also see it influence each department and how it handles its information and processes. So this element of change management is key in strategy and policy development in the ICT sector. So we also expect these learning outcomes. Key points, the importance of benchmarking, and I'm sure you've seen this, the SWOT analysis. But also important is to understand the role of the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. Who is this is you. You may be right now that may be your position, but it's not yet been clear, but to understand what this role is in the modern organization. So the teaching methods we shall have, we expect to use lectures, prescribe some weekly readings. I've already posted for you some materials to read. We shall also use the discussion forum to continue our discussion beyond the classroom, and also a case study, case study discussion. We should have, this was changed. We should be having 2 group presentations, one presentation and 1 paper. This is cancelled out, the individual. And then 1 final written paper that is individual. Any questions so far?
No, no question.
Okay. So we're going to start with a very simple basic definition of what are ICTs. Yeah. So you've seen this so many times, and I'm sure you've written about it. So I wouldn't want to start questioning you what ICT is, but we know what it is. This is something we use that gives us access to information, that allows us to store our information and also communicate it. We also know the different kinds of ICTs that we have seen in our workplaces and over time. We know the components. The major thing is what are those components? The first thing is the people. Yeah. The people are very much part and parcel of ICT. And this is one thing I think that is relatively unknown, especially to the non-ICT professionals. They don't realize that they are part and parcel of systems. They are part and parcel of the entire system. And we too also sometimes we forget as ICT professionals, we forget it, but people are part and parcel of systems. Why? Because they are the ones who supply the information, the data, and they're also the ones who access it. And they're the ones who know exactly how they need to access it. Yeah, so people are very, very much part and parcel of systems. Yeah, very, very much part and parcel of systems. You could ask yourself a simple question. For instance, why we have free and open source technologies everywhere. Example, Linux. We have even, it's now everywhere, even desktop system softwares are available. Yet to this day, Windows is still one of the most commonly used and most usable desktop software. Why? Because Windows thinks about the person, the user. Beyond the politics, the user is a key point. Second, we have the information, which is the output. Then you have the physical components. Then you have the procedures, what needs to be done and by who and when. Those are the procedures. So you realize when we think about the procedures, we go outside of the ICT department. So you realize why, when we're thinking about strategic ICT development policy and strategy and policy development, we also think about procedures. Then we also know there must be change management, because procedures are carried out by non-ICT members. So which means we should be seeing a change happening outside of, beyond the ICT department. So when you find yourself like that gentleman I talked to who said he had a policy but no one knew, then that policy is useless. It's equivalent. It's not even an art piece, because art is usually put on the wall to be enjoyed. Then you have the software, then you have the raw data. So that is ICT in general. So we see, if we're going to now talk about, I'm hoping by now we can begin to see, if we're going to talk about ICT strategy and policy development, we are thinking about all these components and how it's going to affect all the components. ICT as a strategic enabler. For us to understand it, we want to see how ICT is changing the way we do business. How ICT is changing the way we do business. One, we are now mobile. It's no longer an excuse to say, I only do work when I'm in the office. We can now see, right now we're learning, we're in the teaching and learning process, but we're physically apart. Yet the teaching and learning process goes on. We shall go offline, and maybe I post a discussion forum, and I post a question and somebody poses another question, and then a discussion goes on. The teaching and learning process continues. We now find on our mobile devices, be it a smartphone. At one time we thought it was only the laptop that was the mobile device, but even now a smartphone is a mobile device. You can use it for practically anything. You can have your Zoom session on your phone. You can access, for example, Moodle on your phone. Google Classroom can also be accessed on the phone. You can access your emails on the phone. I am part of a board. We have a local tea factory here in Kienjojo, and I'm part of the board. And one of the things I remember one of the things that we did was we created a WhatsApp group. And we talked about, we had asked management to give us daily updates on green leaf received. And every day, at the end of the day, the general manager sends us an update on because we had a drive. We said we want to increase green leaf uptake. Why? The factory is owned by farmers. So it's attempting to attract back the farmers back to their factory after a long spell of some financial difficulties. So we said we now have a drive. We developed some, we agreed to some strategies management put up to try and increase green leaf. And now the management sends daily updates that, oh, today we received 30 tons, today we reached 48, now it's 50, and so on and so forth. So that you can see now, whereas we are not physically together, we are getting a daily report. And this is essential because of the mobile solutions that we now have. Yeah, the mobile solution, not just in terms of software, but also in terms of connectivity, that you can now connect your phone to the internet. If you are to refer to myself again, the dinosaur that is in me in terms of ICT, I remember our first phones were these Nokia phones, with the big, very long antenna. Those big, we used to call them, they were like bricks. You couldn't imagine that at a certain point in time, you'd access, your phone could connect to the internet and business goes on as usual. So these are the solutions we now see. If you go even now to the developed countries, we now have smart cities, not just a smart device, but smart cities. The other thing we're seeing now is cloud computing. So we are now going to third-party servers, which allows business continuity. Look at Umu. We've been on Google Apps for Education. I think it could be now 18, 19 years, coming to 20. And I remember when at first the students alone were moved. And then later on, the staff males were also moved. And I remember how happy staff members were at the stability of things now. At first, I remember Umu used to host its own website. Now we have hosting services. Renu has a number of cloud computing services offered to universities, and so on and so forth. This is now the norm. So what has it done? It cuts down on costs. It cuts down on resources. When you have shared resources, it helps to cut down on costs. Then it also levels the playing field. It levels also the playing field. What else are we now seeing? Especially with the introduction of artificial intelligence. We now have extreme customer segmentation. There's this, I don't know if some of you may have DSTV services, and they are constantly now talking about their new IS system, Chris, who they're teaching to be human. And what is Chris's primary objective is to suggest to you, based on your viewing history, movies and shows that you may be interested in. That's all extreme customer segmentation. Yeah. Connectivity, this goes hand in hand with the mobile services. And then also the decreasing cost of devices and their increasing functionality. My sister was telling me that there is a young man, I'm in the village here, we got them somebody to help them, a young man from the village here to help them in Kampala. So we usually send them things using the link bus, and we send the ticket, the receipt. So she was telling me, you can send it directly to this boy. And then I said, oh, he has a smartphone. She said, no, he has a feature phone, but it has WhatsApp. So even now you find the featured phones are now connected, and they have these applications on their phones. So it's becoming increasingly easier and cheaper. The social impact, this I had talked about earlier, the social media impact cannot be denied now. This giant, it's now a giant that you can't get rid of. The social media impact. It's quite important. It can make or break you. So no business can now say, we don't want to think about this. We want to stick with the brick and mortar situation. We have things have changed drastically. So that discussion so far gives us an idea of how the ICT landscape has changed and how it has changed the way we do things. Do we have any questions so far?
No, Doctor.
Okay, let's move on. So what is strategy? Now we're going to have, I'm going to go through these lecture slides, but I would encourage you, please look at the reading material that I've put up, plus also the 2 videos that I've put up. They also give a more simpler definition, a more defined, easier definition. So please have a look at it. So we want to look at generically strategic management, because this is not a new topic. Anyone who has done business administration or is in an MBA program, this is an area that is not. It is not unique to ICT. ICT is now borrowing it and trying to make ICT, or trying to give a tool to ICT heads, a tool that can help them make or use ICT more strategically. So what is strategic management? Yeah, what is strategy? And I'll leave the definition of strategy to the videos I've put up on the materials. So it's an art and it's a science. It's an art and it's a science. And it is very specific decisions an organization takes to achieve certain objectives. Very specific intentional decisions an organization decides to take to achieve certain objectives. So there must be certain objectives that have been specified. And we say that in order to achieve these objectives, we must take routes A, B, C, D. In other times, it's also referred to as a game plan. Now, one of the key points you will find when you read the materials is that strategy started with war and the army. Yeah, it started with war and the army. Any army has a game plan. Any army has strategic objectives and strategic goals. Now, when we bring it to real life, of course, in real life, it is war. I remember the professor who trained me on this course unit said that if you want to know the art of war, look at a woman. And he said, if you want to know how women are very good at war, is they are good at war paint. He called the makeup war paint, because your intention is to, but of course I don't believe that. I personally don't believe that in any way. Women put on makeup for different reasons, but someone may have a different perspective. So the strategic plan requires that there are certain tough managerial choices, the decisions that are made, yeah, that and the object and these tough decisions are meant to give a strategic positioning, to gain a strategic positioning within a market. So these strategic goals are expressed in policies, procedures, and operations. So we see them acted out in our policies, procedures, and operations. So basically, strategic management starts with the formulation, then we have the implementation, and then we have an evaluation. Why do we have an evaluation? Essentially, it's because the strategic formulation, the strategy is intended to achieve a certain goal. So you must have a point where you evaluate your strategy. Now, later on, we shall see that a strategy has a time span. It has an expiry date. So at the end of somewhere in between or after or when it expires, there must be an evaluation process to see if the strategy is actually helping you achieve your goal. I gave you the example of the board of directors the board that I belong to, where we discussed with management about increasing green leaf supply, and we said we want to use these strategies and say, okay, now we want to know, is this strategy working? Are we seeing an increment in green leaf supply? And therefore, we get those daily updates to see that we're actually getting the increment. So those are basically the processes. Now, the first stage of formulation includes a vision and a mission. Now, I'm sure many of you have seen this before. You've seen in your organization, usually it is something, the vision and mission statements of any organization are usually public. You find them on the website, you find it probably put at the reception area, but it's there. So the formulation process begins with a vision and mission statement. Now, when we see this, we have to think about it also now in terms of ICT strategy. The ICT strategy must have a vision and mission statement aligned to the organization's overall vision and mission statement. The formulation process also has identification of external opportunities and threats. We have internal strengths and weaknesses. We have long-term objectives. Then we generate alternative strategies. And then we choose particular strategies to pursue. So let's go through these. Let's go through the strategy formulation in detail. In the strategy formulation process, we ask ourselves what new businesses we intend to enter. What businesses do we intend to abandon? How do we allocate resources? How do we expand operations or diversify? In all of this, one of the key points with strategy is the intended purpose is growth. The intended purpose is growth. That is why we are thinking of what new businesses do we intend to enter, what do we need to abandon. Allocating resources means we want to grow. We are looking at new markets. Or can we have a joint venture? How do we avoid a hostile takeover? So these are essentially things that will guide you into growth. Now, of course, as I'm talking about this, I'm talking about strategy in general, not about ICT strategy. But these questions should later on guide you on ICT strategy development. Why? Because ICT strategy development can help a business come into new business ventures. Whereas at first you may have focused on the local market, ICT can give you the international market. ICT can help to diversify to a new market. Maybe at one point you are only focused on those who are surrounding you, but there are those who may be a different age group, the youth who prefer online. Yeah, so you begin to think about ICT, how ICT can now help your organization venture into new businesses or business ventures. We come to implementation. So the implementation would require the objectives that have been set. We want to know the objectives that have been set. Then we formulate policies. This is how formulating policies is how we implement strategy. We motivate employees. Why? Because there is a change coming on. The allocation of resources so that the new strategies can be executed. The last stage, evaluation. So when we were formulating our strategy, one of the things we got were the internal and external factors that may affect the organization. You get the current factors, you get the current situation, and then the future. So you are evaluating yourself against the internal and external factors and against the objectives you wanted to achieve. Then also you look at the actions you wanted to correct as well, because remember there's a change management that is going on. The things that you changed, that you corrected, and then to see if it actually brought up the performance, the measured performance you are aiming for. So far, do we have any question?
No, Doctor.
Okay. Now, one of the key things about strategic management is that it is based on intuition. Yeah, it is based on intuition. Now, one might say, okay, this really doesn't make sense, but it does. We always know, especially those in management, know when there's a need for a change. We always get that feeling when we know we need to change the way we are doing things in order to break even, in order to break into a certain market. Yeah, we need to have that. We need to have some kind of change. And all great businesses, if you hear any of the stories, for example, find out the story of how Bill Gates started Windows. Just go and find out about it. And you see, it was intuition. It was essentially intuition. So it's that point, that intuition is when you need to see that there is a situation, there's a change in tides, and therefore the business also has to change the way it does its things, the way it carries out its processes. Now, especially now in the age of ICT, it's imperative, it's extremely important that organizations pick up the digital elements where they can go digital to enter new markets, not just to improve processes, business processes, but even to enter new markets, to find out about new markets. Yeah. The existence of things like Facebook and Google is not by chance. We may think they are providing us a free service, but they're actually collecting data on us, which they then later on sell to organizations so that these organizations can know new markets they can target. That's why these giants exist. Now, there are three ways any organization can compete. These are the most commonly known, but the third is alliances. But the first three are those that are most well known. The first cost is when one fights to provide leadership in terms of price. I'm offering services at the lowest possible price. Here in the tea industry, it's the other way around. The factory that is offering you the highest price is the one you go for, of course. That's also a price war. The second is differentiation. When the organization decides to differentiate itself from others in terms of maybe its outlook or the market it's targeting, things like that. The third is focus. It's when you target your goods and services to a specific group of people. Some may say, I'm going for the poor, and someone else say, I'm going for the very rich. Those are the first three that are the traditional strategies for competition. The third is alliances. This is where businesses decide to liaise with others within the same industry or in a related industry to gain a competitive advantage. Now, again, one may ask, how is ICT related to this? ICT can support in any of these areas. For example, in extreme segmentation, ICT can get you the information on where to target your advert. In differentiation, if you go to any website, university websites, each university is striving to state its difference. It's the brand, the difference in brand with other universities. Yeah. And of course, ICT is very good at lowering costs. Look at us now, we are online. This saved us. Me teaching you online has saved the university a lot. Number one, the university doesn't have to feed me anymore with me going to the main campus. Number two, the university doesn't have to give me money to travel to Ruvaga to come and teach you. It has also saved you. You can study your course in the comfort of your home. Right now, all of you would be in Ruvaga with mosquitoes coming in and biting us through the windows and so on and so forth. And then you have the discomfort of looking for transport back through the Kampala traffic. So that ICT can support in any of these strategies. Now let us look at key terms in strategic management. The first is the vision statement. We have all seen this in our workplaces. This is UMU's vision statement: to be a university that is nationally and internationally recognized for excellence in teaching, learning, research, advancement of knowledge, and community engagement. It's basically a statement that says this is what we want to become. Now, UMU has to periodically evaluate itself. Have we achieved this status? Are we nationally and internationally recognized for excellence in teaching and learning and research? Is this who we are? UMU can evaluate itself. Now, ICT can say, how do we help UMU achieve this vision? We can start with a website. We can continue on to social media, broadcasting about the achievements of UMU in terms of teaching, learning, in terms of research, in terms of community engagement. You can start by doing that. That is one of the ways, one of the strategic, one of the things the ICT department can do. The second is the mission statement. So this one gives purpose and distinguishes the business from others in a similar situation, in the same industry. So let's just have a look at the statement of UMU. If I can just move this. To provide high quality education, training, and research for the betterment of society guided by ethical values. Now, you look at a statement like ethical values, that's a key point in UMU. When UMU was being started, the ethical values was highlighted. So that differentiates UMU from other institutions. External opportunities and threats. That's another key term that you're going to find in strategic management. So this is where an organization looks at anything that may be a threat. For example, a new law that has been enacted. One may look at the computer. I've been seeing this, I didn't read it very thoroughly, the Computer Misuse Act or something like that. That's one thing ICT members, ICT heads need to look at. How does it affect? The privacy in the Data Privacy and Protection Act of Uganda. That is something that every head ICT should look at. There are certain economic trends that are maybe going on, that are threats. For example, now what we are going through with high costs of living and high costs in product prices and so on and so forth. The new trends in environmental care, e-waste, political feelings and what is going on, legal matters, the new acts that are going on. These are things that must be looked at. Do they prevent, you ask yourself, does this present an opportunity or does this present a threat? So even in ICT, this is something, especially for ICT, we look at it from an ICT perspective. So these are just some that I point out, but of course the list grows because our societies and lives grow with time. The others is internal strengths and weaknesses. This is where we see things, what we are doing well and what we are doing poorly. And then we compare we don't just look at ourselves, but we also compare ourselves to our competitors. This is where benchmarking comes in. Benchmarking comes in here because you need to compare yourself with your competitor. Another term is objectives. So because the strategy must lead to a specified goal. So these goals are usually long term. Some can be 1 year, others 2, 3, others 5 years, depending on the organization. But these provide something to measure when you're carrying out evaluation, something to measure to know that you have now achieved this or you're on your way to achieving it. They should also be reasonable and clear. Yeah, they should be reasonable and clear. Another key term is strategies. So this one, we've talked about it in detail, but please go ahead and look at the videos before I also brainwash you. We have also what we call annual objectives. There are those who decide to split the objectives into something that can be measured annually. But that depends on the developers. One can decide to have one set of objectives which are reviewed at the end of 3 years or 5 years. Another key term, final key term, is policies. Now, policies are what make, this is how we implement our strategies. So these are guidelines, rules, procedures established to support efforts to achieve a certain goal. They also help to guide decision making. Yeah, and they address repetitive or recurring situations. So things like, how do we purchase our ICT equipment? How will you handle security, firewalls, and so on and so forth? So that's what policies, that's the primary purpose of policies. Any questions so far?
No, doctor.
Okay, let's continue. Let's look at strategy management, the strategic management model. So this is a very generic one. It basically begins with the questions: where are we now? Where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? Yeah, very, very basic. Where are we now? Where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? So here I have a comprehensive strategic model, strategic management model. There are many, but this is just an example that you can look at. It starts, everything starts with the mission and vision statements of any organization, because these statements tell us, they tell us where we want to go, but they also ask us to evaluate ourselves. Where are we now? Have we achieved this vision? We need to create another vision statement or a mission statement. And these statements then drive us, this vision and mission statements then drive us to evaluate our external environment, our opportunities and threats. Then we look at our internal environment, where we look at our strengths and weaknesses, vis-a-vis achieving our vision and mission statements. Now, based on these evaluations, we then define long-term objectives. What do we want to achieve in order to gain this vision and mission statements? Now, based on those long-term objectives, we then formulate strategies to help us achieve those objectives. Formulate strategies to help us achieve those objectives. I gave you the example of what our management team at this local factory did. They wanted to increase green leaf, so they said we're going to use these strategies A, B, C, D. And daily they update us. So that is the implementation. Implement the strategy, and implement the strategies through policies, procedures, and processes. So in implementing these, we obviously have some changes happening. And these changes happen in different departments. Okay? These changes happen in different departments. Once these changes are made, after a certain period, we evaluate performance. We evaluate performance in relation to, again, our mission and vision statements. We evaluate ourselves if we have achieved our vision and mission statements. How much further do we need to go? What new strategies do we need? Any questions so far? Again, this is about strategy in general, but it applies. We shall look at it again when we come to ICT strategy. Do we have any questions so far?
No, Doctor.
Okay, let's move on. So why strategic management? Why strategic management? We are trying to identify opportunities. Opportunities. Remember, the purpose of any organization is that it must grow, gain competitive advantage, make more money. In other words, even if it's not a profit-oriented organization, if it is a it's looking at social development, still there's some growth you're expecting, some development you're expecting. So you're also looking for an opportunity to exploit, an opportunity to prioritize. So that's one of the benefits. You're also looking at management problems. Where are you not doing things right? Yeah. You're also looking for areas where you can improve coordination and control. You're also looking for minimizing situations of hostile conditions and change. Allocation of resources, effective allocation of resources, and so on and so forth. When should we not do strategic planning? First, when you don't have time. Again, I want to point out that the objective of this course unit is not that at the end of it you have developed a strategy and policy for your organization. No, it takes time. It takes resources, commitment from leadership. Yeah, commitment from leadership, from management. So even for you as ICT, you're not going to develop your strategy and policy in isolation. It has to be hand in hand with top management. You shouldn't attempt strategy formulation when you are in a crisis or in a transition. Why? It defeats the purposes of these first three requirements. So why do some firms not do strategic planning? You may be thinking, I've never seen this being done at my workplace. Number one, there may be a lack of knowledge about it. That's one. Two, there may be a poor reward structure. Someone may say, why should I even bother? I'll do all this and no one will even say thank you. They'll simply hijack whatever I've done. Some companies spend most of their time firefighting. Others may see it as a waste of time or too expensive, and so on and so forth. You can go through this in your own time. Now, what are the pitfalls, things that cause failure in strategic development? When one thinks that they can use it to gain control over decisions and resources. Yeah, it's very much a democratic process. If you want to do it simply for accreditation and regulatory requirements, then you're simply going to copy and paste and not have something develop organically. Hastily moving from mission development to strategy. Remember, strategy development needs time. Communication. This is the strategy development involves everyone. It's not simply for ICT and top management or for the finance department and top. No, it's for everyone because it's going to affect everyone. It's going to affect the processes and procedures of every single employee. You can go through the rest in your own time. These are some questions for discussion. I'll put them up on Moodle and in the discussion forum. How strategic management can be used to improve both efficiency and effectiveness. We can have a discussion on this generically, and then later on, bring it down to ICT strategy formulation. We have any questions so far? This ends our introduction. Do you have any question so far?
Dr. No.
Okay. Now, my question to you is, should we continue to the next topic, or we leave it for tomorrow? Some people may be tired. They've had a long day's work.
Doctor, I'm thinking we may leave it for tomorrow, given the fact that some of our colleagues are not even online.
Oh, some people are not online.
Because the class should be bigger than than 5.
Oh, yeah, anyway, that's true. That is true. Okay, we can stop here for now.
Maybe, Doctor.
Yes.
I had a question.
Yes.
Maybe does the absence of policies or management that does not respect policies, does it affect strategic management somehow?
Management not respecting policies.
Yes.
Yes, and I think that would mainly happen if management was not involved in the development of policy. Sometimes you may be pushed into developing a policy because there's something that has come up, and again, to satisfy some regulatory body. But make it a point to introduce the policy to management and explain why it's there, so that they can support it. But essentially, the proper organic formulation of policy and strategy is that it should involve everyone. Especially now for ICT, it should involve top management, which top management then pushes it to other departments. Have I answered your question so far?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay. Do we have any other question? It may not even be related to our topics of discussion, but maybe about the course, the module.
Maybe, Doctor, about the study time tomorrow.
Okay, yes, that's a good one. I was also thinking about it. When do we start our lecture? Is 9 o'clock too early? 9 a.m.
In fact, I was thinking about 8 p.m.
8 a.m.
I mean 8 a.m.
8 a.m. Is that okay with everyone? Is 8 a.m. okay with everyone? Robert says 9 a.m. should be okay. Which would it be? 8? I don't mind either.
Doctor, I think we can take 9 because sometimes when we say 8, some members end up joining at 8:30.
Okay. So let's start at 9, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you everyone for attending today's lecture. Let me just stop recording.